Hello there, and welcome to Deep Sea Slumber. Tonight, we descend, slowly, past the reach of sunlight, past the last faint blue of the shallows, down into a place where the ocean becomes something else entirely. There is a creature living in that darkness. It has been there for a very long time. It does not move quickly. It does not need to. Where it lives, patience is not a virtue. It is simply the only way. Its shape is one of the strangest things the ocean has produced. A mouth that seems too large for the body behind it. A long, thin tail trailing away into the dark, tipped with a faint and quiet light. A form that looks, at first glance, like something imagined rather than something real. And yet, it is entirely real. And it has been solving the problem of survival in one of the most difficult places on Earth for longer than we have been here to wonder at it. The Gulper Eel lives in the deep ocean. Not just deep, but deep in the way that presses in from all sides, deep in the way that removes almost everything a living thing might rely on. There is no sunlight. There is very little warmth. Food does not arrive on any schedule. The world down there is defined not by abundance, but by its opposite, long stretches of near-nothingness, broken occasionally by the brief and precious possibility of a meal. What survives in that world must be built for it. Not built for speed or for beauty as we tend to recognize it, but built for waiting. Built for the rare moment when something edible drifts close enough. Built to take that moment fully, completely, without hesitation, and then to carry it forward through the long dark that follows. The Gulper Eel is that kind of animal. Everything about it, the enormous hinged jaw, the elastic body, the slender tail with its small living light, is an answer to a question the deep ocean asks of everything that tries to live there. The question is simple. The answer the eel has arrived at is astonishing. Tonight, we will spend time with that answer. We will look at what the eel is, how it moves, how it feeds, how it carries a point of light through a world where light is almost entirely absent. We will follow it through the physics of a place most of us will never go, and find that what first looks like strangeness begins, slowly, to look like something else. Something closer to elegance. Something that asks us to reconsider what we thought we knew about what a fish could be, or what a life in darkness might require. This is the kind of journey we take together here. Not rushing toward facts, but moving gently through them, the way water moves through deep places, unhurried, quiet, curious about what lives in the spaces we don't often think about. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, before we go further, let your shoulders settle. You don't need to hold them up right now. Whatever the day was, it is behind you, and you are here in the dark, which is a fine and restful place to be. Let your breath slow a little, not forced, just allowed. The way the deep ocean breathes, if it breathes at all, in long, unhurried movements, pressure shifting so gradually you would not notice unless you were very still. We are going down tonight, not quickly. The descent into deep water is never quick. It is a gradual leaving behind of one world and an arrival by degrees into another. The light will fade as we go. The colors will go first, the reds, then the oranges, then the yellows, until only blue remains, and then even the blue will thin and disappear, and we will be in a place that is not frightening, but simply different, older, perhaps. Quieter, certainly. Somewhere down there, a long and patient creature is drifting. Its mouth is open, just slightly. Its tail is moving in a slow and private rhythm, the small light at its tip pulsing faintly, a red-tinged glow in water that has not seen the sun in a very long time. It is not hunting exactly. It is existing. It is being present in the dark in a way that has kept its kind alive through eras we can barely name. We are going to drift alongside it for a while. Let your body be heavy now, the way things are heavy in deep water, not sinking exactly, but settled, held. The pressure here is not threatening. It is simply the world, pressing gently inward, reminding you that you are somewhere real, somewhere quiet, somewhere that has been here much longer than any worry you carried to bed tonight. The eel is ahead of us, barely visible, a silhouette in water that is almost perfectly dark. Let's begin. At first, it is the outline that lingers in the mind, but the outline becomes stranger the longer we look. The mouth opens wider than the body that contains it. That is not a figure of speech. The gulper eel's jaws are so loosely articulated, so lightly hinged, that the animal can open its mouth to a gape that would seem impossible for a creature of its size. The lower jaw in particular hangs forward and down in a way that other fish simply cannot replicate. It is not a small exaggeration of what a normal jaw can do. It is a different kind of jaw entirely, unhooked from the rigid architecture that governs most fish mouths, freed from the constraints that make most predators limited to prey of roughly their own dimensions. The proportion is what stops you. The head and jaws can account for a significant fraction of the animal's entire length. In some specimens, the gape alone appears almost comically oversized against the long, thin body that trails behind it. It looks like an error. It looks like a sketch where the artist misjudged the scale and kept drawing anyway. It is not an error. To understand why the mouth is this way, it helps to understand what the deep ocean gives an animal to eat, and how rarely it gives it. Below 1,000 meters, food is not reliably anywhere. There is no seasonal bloom of plankton at this depth, no sunlit surface layer sending down a steady rain of organic material. What arrives from above is slow, sparse, and unpredictable. The deep sea is not barren exactly, but it is close. Animals here have adapted to a world where waiting is normal and eating is occasional. A meal that presents itself must be taken. A meal that passes untaken may not come again for a very long time. This is the ecology the gulper eel was shaped inside of. Not the ocean as we tend to imagine it, teeming, layered with life, full of options. The ocean as it exists in its deepest, coldest, most patient form. A place where scarcity is not a crisis, but a condition. A place where the ordinary state of being is hunger. And the question evolution had to answer was not how to eat often, but how to eat well on the rare occasions when something edible drifts close enough to matter. The mouth is the answer. Most fish jaws are built for precision. They are engineered for a particular kind of prey, a particular size, a particular behavior, a particular moment of attack. The jaws of a barracuda are built for speed and shear. The jaws of a parrotfish are built to scrape and grind. Even among generalist predators, the jaw is a specialized tool, shaped by the prey that animal most commonly encounters. The gulper eel's jaw is not a precision instrument. It is something more like a net. The bones involved are real but loosely connected, joined by ligaments that allow a range of motion far beyond what a more rigidly structured fish could achieve. The lower jaw can swing outward and down, creating an opening that is wide in all directions at once. Not just forward, but laterally, and broadly enough to engulf prey that would be too large for the eel's slender body to suggest it could manage. The upper jaw is similarly mobile, capable of extending forward in a way that increases the effective volume of the open mouth. When the eel strikes, the motion is more of an expansion than a bite. The jaws do not snap shut on a target, so much as the whole front of the animal opens around it. The prey is not caught between two closing surfaces. The prey is, in a sense, surrounded. That distinction matters. It means that even imprecise targeting can succeed. Even a prey animal that moves during the strike may still end up inside. The margin for error is wider because the opening itself is wider. In a world where meals are rare, a wider margin for error is not a luxury. It is survival arithmetic. There is something worth pausing on here. Most predators are built for a world where prey is common enough that efficiency and precision pay off. Speed rewards the fast. Accuracy rewards the precise. The predator that can select the right target and take it cleanly will eat more often than one that lunges broadly and hopes for the best. The gulper eel evolved in a world where that logic inverts. When meals are rare, precision becomes less important than capacity. What matters is not the ability to take the right prey cleanly. What matters is the ability to take almost any prey that comes within range. The jaw that can accommodate a wide range of prey sizes, that can open broadly enough to catch something even when the approach is imperfect, that can swallow things larger than a narrow mouth would ever attempt. That jaw is the jaw that keeps an animal alive in the deep. Weakness may have pushed innovation here too. Not the weakness of the eel itself, but the weakness of the environment, its inability to provide regular meals. Scarcity shaped the design. The enormous mouth is not an accident of abundance. It is a direct response to having almost nothing. The hinges that make all of this possible are worth understanding on their own terms. In most vertebrates, the jaw joint is a relatively tight articulation. The bones meet in a way that provides stability and force. This is useful when you need to bite hard, to crush or tear. It limits range of motion, but what it sacrifices in flexibility, it gains in mechanical advantage. The gulper eel has traded that advantage almost entirely away. The jaw joint is loose, not broken or malformed, but genuinely, functionally loose in a way that is part of the design. The ligaments that connect the jawbones to the skull are long and elastic, allowing the jaw to swing far out of the position a normal fish jaw would occupy. There is almost no resistance to that opening motion. The jaws fall forward and apart with very little muscular effort required. This has consequences for how hard the eel can bite. The answer is not very. The gulper eel is not a crushing predator. It cannot exert the kind of force that would be needed to subdue large, strong prey. The looseness that makes the mouth enormous also makes it weak in the conventional sense. But weakness in one direction can be strength in another. The jaws that cannot crush can open wide enough to take in prey that a stronger, more rigid jaw could never accommodate. The trade-off is real, and in the deep sea, it is the right trade-off. The eel does not need to crush, it needs to contain. The prey that arrives at this depth is often small, soft, and exhausted by the pressure and cold. Containment matters more than force. The design knows what world it lives in. The teeth are small and numerous, lining the jaws in rows that curve inwards slightly. They are not built for cutting or grinding. They are built for holding, for ensuring that something which enters the open mouth does not easily exit. The curve of the teeth means that prey can move forward, deeper into the mouth, but struggles to move backward out of it. This is a common feature in animals that swallow prey whole. The teeth are less a weapon than a one-way door. Combined with the loose, expansive jaw, this creates a system that is genuinely difficult to escape once triggered. The mouth opens, the prey enters or is engulfed. The teeth prevent retreat. The jaws close around whatever is inside, and the long, slow process of swallowing begins. It is not a violent system. It is, in its way, a patient one, designed not for the drama of the chase, but for the quiet finality of the moment when something has already been taken. There is also the question of what the eel can see when it strikes. The eyes of the Gulper eel are small, surprisingly small for an animal with such an elaborate feeding apparatus. In the deep ocean, where light is nearly absent, vision becomes a complicated investment. Some deep-sea animals have evolved enormous eyes to gather the faintest traces of bioluminescent light. Others have reduced their eyes significantly, relying instead on other senses. The lateral line, which detects pressure changes in the water, chemoreception, which detects dissolved molecules, and sensitivity to vibration, which can signal the presence of another animal without any light at all. The Gulper eel appears to rely on these other senses more than on sight. The small eyes may still detect the faint glow of bioluminescent prey, but the primary cues for a feeding strike are likely mechanical. The disturbance that a moving animal creates in still, cold water, the pressure wave that arrives just before the prey itself. This means the enormous mouth serves a second function beyond simply being large. It is a wide target. If the eel is navigating by pressure and vibration, rather than by precise visual tracking, then having a mouth that opens broadly in all directions means that a slightly imprecise lunge can still succeed. The prey does not need to be perfectly centered in the eel's path. It only needs to be close enough to fall within the expanding radius of that opening. The whole system, loose jaw, wide gape, inward curving teeth, limited vision, holds together as a single coherent answer to a single coherent problem. How do you eat reliably in a world where you can barely see, where meals arrive without warning, and where the cost of a missed opportunity is measured in days? You open as wide as you can. You hold whatever enters. You wait for the next chance. What stays with you, thinking about the Gulper eel's mouth, is not the strangeness of it. The strangeness fades once the logic becomes clear. What stays is something quieter. The recognition that this design is not extravagant. It is not excessive. It is exactly as large as it needs to be for the world it lives in. We tend to think of extreme features as adaptations to extreme conditions, and that is true as far as it goes. But the Gulper eel's mouth is a reminder that what looks extreme from the outside can look perfectly calibrated from within. The mouth is not too large for the animal. The animal is precisely sized for the mouth. The whole body, the whole life, the whole ecology of the creature has been arranged around that opening, around the possibility it represents, the rare and necessary event of a meal appearing in the dark. The jaw is loose. The hinge falls open easily. The dark water holds still around the animal, as it always does, as it has for a very long time. And the eel waits, as it always waits, for something to drift close enough to matter. And the mouth, enormous as it is, makes sense only when we notice that the rest of the body has made the same quiet bargain. The gulper eel is mostly nothing. That is not a dismissal. It is, in its way, the most remarkable thing about it. Strip away the great jaws, and what remains is a long, tapered body with very little inside it. Reduced muscle, a minimal skeleton, organs that have been pared down to their essentials. The tail is a thread. The flesh along the sides is thin in a way that feels almost deliberate. This is not a body built for power. It is a body built for a single specific kind of readiness. A fish shaped by scarcity looks different from a fish shaped by abundance. The gulper eel looks the way it does because the deep sea rarely offers anything, and when it does, the offer is brief. The musculature of the gulper eel is considerably reduced compared to most fish of similar length. This is not damage or decay, it is design. Muscle is expensive to maintain. In metabolic terms, it demands fuel to exist, even when it is not being used. Fuel that must come from food, and food at depth is almost never guaranteed. A leaner body costs less to run. The gulper eel has, over a very long time, shed the bulk it could not afford. That is why the tail is so striking in its slenderness. It trails behind the eel like a filament, tapering to almost nothing. At depth, it serves a different purpose than raw propulsion. It moves the animal, yes, but slowly, and without the kind of muscular urgency that most predators rely on. The eel is not built for pursuit. It is built for drift. There is something almost philosophical in that. The animal has given up the capacity for speed, for chase, for the aggressive expenditure of energy. What it has kept is patience and the ability to open when the moment comes. What makes the body truly strange is what it can do when that moment arrives. The gulper eel's stomach is capable of expanding dramatically, stretching to accommodate prey that may be comparable in size to the eel itself. The body wall is elastic. The organs can shift. The stomach can distend outward until the animal's profile changes entirely, the midsection ballooning into a shape that looks nothing like the thin creature that existed moments before. Imagine a long, narrow envelope that can, without tearing, hold something far larger than it appeared to contain. That is roughly what the gulper eel's body accomplishes. The mechanism is not fully unlike what happens in other fish. Many predators have some capacity for stomach expansion, but the degree to which the gulper eel achieves this is unusual. The skin, the stomach wall, the connective tissue, all of it is tuned for elasticity in a way that suggests the entire body has organized itself around one problem. Not swimming, not speed, not stealth in the conventional sense. Accommodation, the ability to receive. This is worth pausing on because it inverts what most of us expect from a predator. We tend to imagine hunters as fast, muscular, explosive. We picture the pursuit, the closing of distance, the decisive strike. The gulper eel has let go of almost all of that. What it has instead is a body that can become, very quickly, much larger than itself, that can take in more than it seems capable of holding. In a world where food arrives unpredictably and rarely, the limit is not catching. The limit is capacity. The gulper eel has solved for capacity. The deep sea has a way of reshaping intuitions about what a body is for. The skeleton of the gulper eel is accordingly light, Bones are expensive too, in the same metabolic currency as muscle. The skeleton that supports the eel's body is reduced and delicate, more framework than structure. The skull, of course, must support those extraordinary jaws. But even there, the bones are not dense and heavy. They are adapted for flexibility and range of motion rather than brute resistance. The whole architecture leans toward the same principle: minimum investment, maximum possibility. This is a body that has been edited down. Over millions of years, the ancestors of the Gulper eel gradually shed the features that cost too much in a place that offered too little. What survived was what mattered. The jaws mattered. The stomach mattered. The capacity to wait, to drift, to open at the right moment, that mattered. What remained after the editing is the animal we have now, a shape that looks to human eyes like something incomplete, something not yet finished. But it is finished. It is exactly what the deep sea asked for. There is a related feature worth dwelling on: the way the eel's body is oriented around sensing rather than seeing. The eyes of the Gulper eel are small, disproportionately small even, given the size of the animal. At extreme depth, light is essentially absent. Vision, as surface animals understand it, is not much use. What the eel relies on instead, as many deep-sea animals do, is the lateral line, a system of sensory cells distributed along the body that detects movement, pressure, and vibration in the water. The lateral line is ancient. It predates the evolution of most of what we recognize as complex animal life. In the Gulper eel, it may be the primary way the animal registers what is happening nearby, not through sight, but through the subtle disturbance that any moving thing creates in the water around it. In other words, the eel does not watch for prey. It feels for it. The body itself is the sensing organ. The whole long surface of the animal is paying attention. That is a different kind of awareness from the one we carry. Not concentrated behind the eyes, but distributed along the entire length of the body. A thin, quiet animal, drifting in the dark, feeling the water around it for the faintest sign of disturbance. The tail deserves more attention than it is usually given. It is, in one sense, the least impressive part of the animal. It thins to almost nothing. It has no obvious weapon at its end, no fin, no spike, no elaborate structure for offense. For most of its length, it is simply a narrowing thread of body, becoming less and less substantial as it extends away from the main mass of the eel. And yet, at the very tip of that tail, there is something remarkable, something that will be explored more fully later. For now, it is enough to say that the tail is not merely a rudder or a trailing appendage. It carries something, something that glows. The slender tail, which seems at first like nothing more than the eel tapering into absence, ends in a point of living light. That is not nothing. That is the deep sea being strange in its most characteristic way, taking what looks like diminishment and hiding inside it something that matters. There is one more thing the body does that deserves its own moment of attention. After a large feeding event, after the jaws have opened and the stomach has expanded and the eel has taken in something substantial, the animal's silhouette changes. The midsection is distended. The body, which had been nearly uniform in its thinness, now carries a visible fullness in it. The eel becomes, briefly, a different shape. This is not unusual in animals that feed infrequently and opportunistically. Snakes do something similar, certain large spiders. animals whose feeding strategy involves long waits interrupted by single events of great importance. The body is not built for constant small intake. It is built for rare, significant intake. The anatomy reflects the rhythm of the life. What is striking about the Gulper eel is how completely the body commits to this. There is no halfway here. The animal has not retained some capacity for regular moderate feeding, alongside a secondary capacity for occasional large feeding. It has chosen, or been chosen by evolution, for one mode almost entirely. The body is a net, cast wide, rarely in dark water, and when something drifts into it, the net closes, and the body remembers what it was built for. There is something quiet in this when you sit with it long enough. We are accustomed to thinking of living things as defined by their activity, by what they do, how they move, how they pursue. The Gulper eel is defined, more than most animals, by what it can receive, by the space it can create inside itself, by the patience it keeps in its thin body while the dark water offers almost nothing. The reduced muscle is not weakness. The light skeleton is not fragility. The elastic stomach is not excess. All of it is the same answer, given again and again in different tissues. Be ready. Cost little. Hold much. Wait. The deep sea is not a place that rewards urgency. It rewards the body that can sustain itself on very little for a very long time, and then, when the rare moment arrives, becomes suddenly, completely, and briefly enormous. The Gulper eel has made that bargain in every cell it carries, and in the stillness of the water around it, it drifts and waits and is enough. Even then, the Gulper eel is not only a mouth and a waiting stomach. At its farthest edge, it keeps a small light. The tail of the Gulper eel ends in a glowing organ, not large, not bright by any surface standard. But in the deep ocean, where light itself is a rare and remarkable thing, even the faintest glow becomes significant. The eel carries this light behind it, at the end of a tail that can extend longer than the rest of its body, like a point of fire trailing through absolute dark. That image is worth sitting with for a moment. A creature that has already asked us to accept an impossible mouth, a body that stretches to hold what it catches, a form reduced to almost nothing in service of one single function. This same creature also carries a lantern, not in front where you might expect a lure, behind, at the very end of its longest, thinnest part. Bioluminescence is common in the deep ocean. That is the first thing to understand, and also one of the stranger facts about that world. Up near the surface, light comes from the sun. Everything down there is lit from above. But below a certain depth, roughly 200 meters, sometimes less, sunlight cannot reach. The water absorbs it. The deep ocean exists in a darkness that is not the darkness of a room with the curtains drawn, or the darkness of a cloudy night. It is the darkness of a place that has not seen the sun in any meaningful way since the water that fills it first settled there. It is old, pressurized, absolute dark. And yet, in that dark, roughly 3/4 of all deep-sea animals produce their own light. Some estimates go higher. The deep ocean is full of living things that glow. That is a number that takes a moment to settle. Not a handful of unusual species. Not a rare adaptation found only in a few strange corners of the deep. 3 out of every 4 animals in a world with no sun making their own light. What that means is that bioluminescence in the deep ocean is not the exception. It is the standard. The dark is not as dark as it seems, if you are the kind of animal that can see what lives there. The light comes from chemistry. A molecule called luciferin reacts with oxygen, and the reaction releases energy as light rather than heat. The animal controls the reaction, controls the glow, turning it on, modulating its brightness, sometimes pulsing it in patterns. The light costs something metabolically. It is not free. But the benefits? Attracting mates, luring prey, communicating, confusing predators, have proven over and over across hundreds of millions of years of deep-sea evolution to be worth the cost. The Gulper eel participates in this. It is not exceptional for glowing. What is exceptional is how it glows, and where, and what color. Most bioluminescence in the deep ocean is blue or blue-green. There is a reason for this that goes deeper than preference. Water absorbs light selectively. Red wavelengths are absorbed first, near the surface. Orange follows. Yellow, green. By the time you are in the deep ocean, almost the only light that travels any significant distance through water is blue. Blue-green. The narrow band of wavelengths that water holds on to least aggressively. This means deep-sea animals have, over long generations, evolved eyes tuned to blue light. They are not generally sensitive to red. Red, in the deep ocean, is effectively invisible. A red animal in deep water appears black. A red light, to most creatures living there, simply does not exist. This is why some deep-sea predators are red themselves. Camouflage through a color that registers as no color at all in the eyes of the animals around them. It is a strange solution. Not hiding behind darkness, exactly. Hiding behind a wavelength that the local visual systems have no way to detect. The Gulper eel's bioluminescent organ glows pink or red. In a world where almost every bioluminescent animal produces blue or blue-green light, because that is the light that travels, that is the light that deep-sea eyes can see. The Gulper eel produces a color that most things down there cannot perceive at all. That is a fact that requires some stillness to absorb. The eel is glowing in a language that most of its neighbors cannot read. It is producing light in the one color that the deep ocean, in a sense, has decided to ignore. Why red? There are theories. None of them are certain. The deep ocean keeps its reasoning to itself, offering only evidence and asking us to infer. One possibility is that the red glow is not meant for other animals at all. It may be that the Gulper eel can see red light, that its own visual system is tuned differently than most of its neighbors. And the tail functions as a private signal, something the eel can perceive and respond to without that signal being legible to the creatures around it. A frequency used between members of the same species, invisible to everyone else. Another possibility is that the color matters less than the movement. The organ at the tail's tip can pulse. It can shift. A point of moving light in absolute darkness is attention-catching regardless of its wavelength. And some animals the eel might want to attract, smaller crustaceans, small fish, may be sensitive to a wider range of light than the larger predators the eel would prefer not to attract. The color may be a filter of sorts, calling in the small and the edible while remaining undetectable to the large and the dangerous. A third possibility is simpler and more humbling. We do not fully know. The organ exists. The color is unusual. The behavior it enables is still being studied, still being inferred from the few observations that exist of living Gulper eels in their actual environment. The deep ocean is not a laboratory. It does not offer easy answers. What we can say with confidence is that the organ is real, that it produces light, that the light is in a wavelength range that stands apart from almost every other bioluminescent animal in the same habitat, and that the eel carries it at the very end of its longest extension, trailing behind as it moves through the dark. The placement is worth considering on its own. Many deep-sea fish that use bioluminescence as a lure carry that lure in front, dangled from a modified fin spine above the mouth, as in anglerfish, or positioned somewhere the animal can direct toward prey. The logic is straightforward. You want the light where you want the prey, close to the mouth, within reach of the jaws. The gulper eel's light is at the opposite end of its body. The tail can be longer than the head and body combined. The glowing organ sits at the very tip of that tail. When the eel moves, the light trails far behind the mouth, behind the stomach, behind the entire main body of the animal. If the light attracts something curious, that curious thing is drawn not toward the jaws, but toward the tail's end, which means it then has a choice. Investigate further, move along the length of the eel's body, and eventually arrive near the mouth, or startle and retreat. This is a patient design. It does not bring food immediately to the jaws. It creates a point of interest at a distance and relies on the curiosity of whatever notices that point of interest to carry things forward. The eel does not lunge. The eel does not chase. The eel drifts and glows and waits to see what the glow draws in. There is something in that arrangement that feels less like predation and more like an invitation. The eel extends its longest, thinnest part into the dark. It puts a small light there, and then it continues to exist, patiently, in the space between the light and the mouth. Bioluminescence itself is ancient. The chemistry of it, luciferin and luciferase, the reaction that produces cold light, evolved independently many times across many different lineages of life. It is not one invention that spread. It is an answer that life kept arriving at separately, in different bodies, across hundreds of millions of years, because the conditions of the deep ocean kept posing the same question. How do you function in total darkness? Light was the answer. Light produced from within, controlled by the animal itself, shaped and timed and aimed in ways that served survival. Not light borrowed from the sun, light made. The gulper eel is part of that long history. Its glowing tail connects it to anglerfish and lanternfish and firefly squid and the vast number of jellies and crustaceans and worms that also glow in the deep, all of them arriving, through different paths, at the same fundamental solution. All of them carrying fire in water. That is an old and patient kind of discovery. Life found light in the dark not once, but again and again, as if the deep ocean were a problem that kept demanding the same answer, no matter how many times it was solved. There is one more thing about the gulper eel's tail light that stays with you, once you know it. The eel is a long animal. Its body is mostly tail, a thin trailing extension that makes up a significant portion of its total length. And at the very end of that extension, there is this small organ, this small glow. When the eel is drifting, as it spends much of its life drifting, that light is far behind the mouth, far behind the body, far behind whatever the eel is doing with its front half. The tail extends into darkness in one direction, while the jaws face the darkness in another. And between those two things, the mouth that opens enormous and the tail that glows small, the whole animal hangs suspended in cold water, quiet, waiting. The light does not illuminate anything. It is not bright enough for that. It is a signal, not a torch, a point of color in a place where color barely exists. In the deepest water, where almost no red wavelengths have survived the descent from the surface, the gulper eel produces red. It makes the color that the ocean has already filtered out. That is a strange and specific kind of persistence. The ocean decided, over great depth and pressure, what colors would survive. The gulper eel produces one that did not. The tail drifts in the dark. The light pulses, or holds steady, or shifts. Whatever is out there in the black water notices, or does not. The eel continues. It has been doing this for a very long time. Patient, dim, red, a lantern at the end of the longest part of itself, burning the one color the deep ocean forgot. A lantern matters only because of the darkness around it, and a vast mouth matters only because the world is so empty. The deep sea begins where sunlight ends. That boundary sits at roughly 200 meters below the surface, and everything below it lives in a different kind of world than the one most life has ever known. Not just darker, not just colder, different in its physics, its chemistry, its rhythms, its demands. The animals that survive there are not simply adapted to hardship. They are shaped by it, the way a river shapes a canyon, slowly, completely, until the stone and the water seem to belong to each other. The gulper eel belongs to that world, the way a canyon belongs to its river. Consider pressure first, because pressure is what most people think of when they imagine the deep sea, and it is worth understanding what it actually does. At the surface, the weight of the atmosphere presses down on every square inch of the body with a force of about 14 pounds. Dive to 1,000 meters, a depth where gulper eels are commonly found, and that pressure multiplies by roughly 100. The water column above becomes enormous, and its weight is distributed evenly across every surface, every tissue, every cell. That sounds like a crushing thing. For a human body, it would be. But pressure in the deep sea is not primarily a problem of being crushed. It is a problem of chemistry. High pressure changes the way molecules behave, the way proteins fold, the way membranes flex, the way enzymes carry out their work. A protein that functions perfectly at the surface may become rigid and useless at depth. A cell membrane that is fluid and responsive in shallow water may stiffen into something more like wax. The biochemistry of deep-sea life has had to solve not just one problem, but thousands of small molecular problems at once. What makes this remarkable is how quietly it was solved. Deep-sea fish, including the gulper eel, carry modified versions of the same proteins and enzymes found in surface animals. The modifications are subtle. A slightly different arrangement of amino acids, a small structural shift that keeps the molecule flexible under pressure. These changes are invisible to the naked eye, and they required millions of years of selection to accumulate. Yet without them, none of this is possible. The deep sea is not just a place. It is a chemical challenge, and every animal that lives there carries the solution written into its molecular structure. That is something worth sitting with. The answer to pressure is not armor or shell or any visible adaptation. It is written into the interior of every cell in a language too small to see. Cold comes next, and it comes steadily. Below the thermocline, the layer where surface warmth finally fades, the temperature of the deep ocean settles into a narrow range, typically between 2 and 4 degrees Celsius. Not the cold of a winter morning, the cold of something that has never been warm. The deep ocean has been near this temperature for a very long time, and the animals that live there have been shaped by that constancy. Cold slows chemistry. Enzymes that work quickly at 20 degrees may barely function at 4. Metabolic rates drop. Digestion slows. Everything that happens inside the body happens at a different pace. And yet, the Gulper eel is not simply a slow animal. It is an efficient one. Its metabolism is calibrated to this temperature the way a clock is calibrated to a particular altitude. Precisely, invisibly, by a process that took far longer than any clock. The reduced musculature that gives the Gulper eel its almost ghostly slenderness is part of this calibration. Muscle is metabolically expensive. It requires energy to maintain even when it is doing nothing. In a world where food is rare and the temperature suppresses everything, carrying less muscle is not weakness. It is economy. The eel does not need to be fast in the way a tuna needs to be fast. It needs to persist. It needs to wait. And waiting is a thing that requires very little if the body has been built around the practice of it. The darkness is harder to describe because darkness in the deep sea is not quite like any darkness we experience on land. There are no stars, no moon, no faint glow of a city somewhere over the horizon. Below a few hundred meters, no sunlight penetrates at all. The darkness is total, and it has been total for as long as the deep ocean has existed. The animals that live there have had no light to navigate by, no visual cues to track prey or recognize mates, or orient themselves in space. And yet, they are not blind exactly. Many deep-sea animals have large, highly sensitive eyes, capable of detecting even the faintest biological light. Others have reduced their eyes to near uselessness and invested instead in other senses. Pressure detection through lateral lines, chemical sensing through olfaction, sensitivity to the tiny electrical fields that moving bodies generate. The Gulper eel's eyes are small. Its lateral line, the sensory organ that runs along the sides of most fish and detects disturbances in the water, is thought to be one of its primary tools for sensing the world. In the dark, the body learns to read water. A small fish passing nearby creates a pressure wave. A current shifts slightly around an obstacle. The water carries information if the animal is sensitive enough to receive it. The lateral line is, in a sense, a way of seeing without light, a map made of movement and displacement rather than photons. That the Gulper eel relies on this ancient sense is fitting. The lateral line predates vision in the history of vertebrate life. It is older than eyes, older than the deep sea itself in some forms. The eel carries one of evolution's earliest solutions into one of the planet's most extreme environments, and the match is quiet and exact. Now consider food, or rather, the absence of it. The deep sea receives almost no energy from the sun. Sunlight drives photosynthesis, and photosynthesis drives almost every food chain on the planet. In the sunlit zone, the ocean is rich with phytoplankton, zooplankton, small fish, larger fish, a web of energy transfer that is dense and rapid and constantly renewed. Below the sunlit zone, none of that primary production exists. Everything that lives in the deep sea depends ultimately on what falls from above. Marine biologists call this the biological pump, though the name makes it sound more mechanical than it is. Organisms die at the surface. Their bodies, or parts of them, sink. Fecal pellets sink. Fragments of organic matter sink. This slow, constant rain of particles, called marine snow, carries the energy of sunlight downward into the dark. By the time it reaches the depths where gulper eels live, most of it has already been consumed. What arrives is sparse, scattered, unpredictable. A world defined by what it lacks is still a world. But it is a world that demands a particular kind of life. The gulper eel's entire body is a response to this scarcity. The vast mouth is a response to scarcity. The elastic stomach is a response to scarcity. The reduced musculature is a response to scarcity. Even the bioluminescent tail drifting through black water like a small and patient question is a response to scarcity. A way of drawing something close in a place where nothing comes close on its own. When you see the gulper eel as a collection of strange features, it looks like an accident, like something assembled carelessly in the dark. When you see it as a response to a world with almost nothing, every strange feature begins to feel not just logical, but inevitable. Scarcity is one of the oldest forces in evolution. Most of what evolution has produced, it has produced in response to the challenge of getting enough food, enough warmth, enough safety. But the deep sea concentrates that challenge to an extreme. There are no shortcuts. There is no abundance to hide in. Every adaptation must count, and every adaptation that does not count is a cost the animal cannot afford. That is why the gulper eel is so stripped down, not just in muscle, but in scale. The skeleton is lightweight. The bones are thin. The organs are reduced to what is necessary. The body does not carry anything that does not earn its place. In a world of scarcity, the body itself becomes a budget, and the gulper eel keeps its budget with something close to discipline. There is a concept in ecology sometimes called the energy budget, the balance between what an animal takes in and what it spends. For most surface animals, the budget is relatively forgiving. Missed meals are inconvenient. For a deep-sea animal like the gulper eel, the budget is narrow and the margins are thin. Every movement costs something. Every process that runs inside the body costs something. The animal that spends less lasts longer, and lasting longer means more chances, however rare, to feed. This may be why the gulper eel drifts more than it chases, why its swimming is intermittent rather than constant, why its body is built for suspension rather than pursuit. In an environment where the cost of movement is high and the chance of encountering prey is low, the optimal strategy may be to move as little as possible and open as wide as possible when something finally comes close enough. Patience in the deep sea is not a temperament. It is a physics problem with one elegant solution. The cold, the pressure, the dark, the scattered food, none of these things are separate challenges. They are the same challenge, expressed in different registers. They all ask the same question: how do you persist in a world that offers very little? The gulper eel answers that question with its entire body, with its vast and hinged mouth, with its elastic walls, with its slender, trailing form, with the small red light it carries at the end of its long tail, drifting through water that has never been warm. Every feature is an answer, and the answers, taken together, describe not a monster, but an animal that has found a way to belong completely to the most extreme and ancient interior of the world. The deep sea has been here for hundreds of millions of years. The Gulper Eel, or something like it, has been here for a long time too. The darkness has not defeated it. The cold has not stopped it. The scarcity has not emptied it. It continues in the black and pressured quiet, doing the slow work of being alive in a place that asks more of life than almost anywhere else on the planet. That it is there at all is, in some quiet way, remarkable. That it has found a shape equal to the place, that is something else entirely. And yet, a body, however strange, is only half a life. The deeper question is how such a creature spends its time. The Gulper Eel does not hunt the way a predator hunts on land. There is no territory to patrol, no herd to stalk across open ground, no chase that ends in a decisive moment. The deep sea does not work that way. Food there is not gathered in herds. It does not graze in meadows. It arrives, when it arrives at all, as a single event. One small animal drifting through a column of black water, moving in some direction that may or may not pass close enough to matter. The Gulper Eel's whole existence is organized around that fact. Not around speed, not around persistence, around readiness. What this means in practice is a life spent largely in stillness. The eel moves slowly through its range, holding its body with a minimum of effort, spending as little energy as possible between the moments when energy is needed. This is not laziness, it is mathematics. In a world where calories are scarce and distances between meals can stretch into days or longer, every movement carries a cost. Every flick of the tail, every change in depth, every effort to reposition in the water column, all of it draws from a reserve that may not be replenished soon. So, the eel drifts. It holds. It waits in the way that only very patient things can wait, without impatience, without urgency, simply occupying the dark water and letting the dark water do what it does. That kind of waiting is hard to imagine from the outside. We are creatures of continuous activity, of restlessness, of time that feels like it should be filled. But the Gulper Eel has no such feeling. Or if it does, it is not one that translates into motion. It simply persists, present in the water, oriented, sensing, alive. And the hours pass around it the way pressure passes around it, without asking anything in return. The eel's body is well suited to this kind of life. Its musculature is reduced compared to fish that swim actively through shallower water. It does not need the powerful lateral muscles of a tuna or the broad tail of a marlin. Speed is not the strategy. The strategy is economy. And the body reflects that choice at every level. Lighter, less dense, built to suspend rather than to drive forward. It can move when it must. It can close distance quickly when the moment calls for it. But the default state is not movement. The default state is the long, patient interval between moments. What the eel relies on instead of speed is sensitivity. Its lateral line, the sensory system that runs along the body of most fish and detects pressure changes and vibrations in the surrounding water, is thought to be well developed. In the darkness, where nothing can be seen and sound travels strangely, pressure and movement become the primary language of the world. A small animal displacing water nearby creates a signature, a slight disturbance in the stillness. The eel does not need to see it. It only needs to feel that something has changed in the water close to it, and close enough to matter. That is what readiness looks like, in the deep. Not tension, not alertness in any visible sense. Just the slow accumulation of information from the water itself, until a piece of that information is different from the rest. When something does come close enough, the eel responds. The large mouth opens wide and fast. The expansion of the jaw creates a pressure drop, and water rushes in, carrying whatever was moving through it. This is not a chase. It is more like a threshold being crossed. A long stillness followed by a single decisive moment, and then stillness again. The whole event may last less than a second. What takes the time is everything before it and everything after. Imagine the water column as a kind of slow rain falling upward. Organic material, dead animals, shed skin, fragments of creatures from shallower depths, drifts downward through the dark in a constant, sparse shower. Small animals live within this drift, feeding on what falls, becoming food themselves for whatever waits below. The Gulper Eel occupies this world, not as a sprinter moving through it, but as a presence within it, positioned to intercept whatever the slow rain delivers. It is less like a hunter and more like something the water passes through on its way somewhere else. This positioning is not random. The eel likely moves vertically through the water column as well as horizontally, following gradients of temperature and pressure that may correspond to where prey tends to concentrate. Certain depths seem to host more life than others. Thin, scattered layers where small crustaceans and fish gather around whatever sparse resources exist. The eel may spend more time at these depths, not because it knows they are productive in any conscious sense, but because the signals it receives there are more frequent, and frequent signals mean more opportunities. Behavior shapes itself around what works over time without requiring intention. There is something settling about that. The eel does not need a plan. It needs a body that is oriented toward the right conditions and the patience to remain in them. Its tail is always trailing behind it as it drifts, that long, thin extension ending in the luminescent organ described in earlier sections. The tail does not propel the eel, it follows. And as the eel holds its position in the water column, the tail drifts slightly, moved by whatever small currents exist at that depth, the faint glow at its tip, pulsing or steadying depending on what the animal is doing. The tail is not passive exactly, but it is unhurried. It occupies its own small space in the dark, separate from the eel's body by several body lengths, a distant point of light that belongs to the same animal, but seems to live its own quiet life. The whole creature, seen in motion, or in the slow suspension that passes for motion, would be difficult to read at first. The enormous mouth at one end, the long tapering body, the trailing tail with its distant glow. It would be hard to know, watching it drift, which end to watch. Hard to know where intention lives in such a shape. The eel does not present itself as a unified form the way a shark does, or a tuna, or a dolphin. It is elongated past the point of obvious coherence, and yet it is coherent. It is moving through its world with the same quiet effectiveness that every deep-sea animal must eventually develop or fail to develop. It is doing what it has always done, in the dark, slowly, without announcement. The eel's relationship to the water around it is one of the more interesting things to hold in mind. It does not fight the water. It does not push through it with force. The body is shaped to offer as little resistance as possible, to slip through the pressure without wasting anything on the effort. When the eel does move with purpose, repositioning, rising or sinking in the column, closing the distance to something sensed nearby, the movement is smooth and contained. Nothing extra, nothing wasted. The water parts and closes behind it, and there is no turbulence left to speak of. This is economy at its most refined. Not the economy of a machine optimized for output, but the economy of something that has learned over a very long time that every expenditure matters. That a life lived in scarcity must be a life lived carefully, not in the human sense of caution, but in the physical sense of conservation. The eel conserves itself the way a candle conserves its wax, by burning as steadily and quietly as possible, giving off only what is needed, lasting as long as the fuel allows. When a meal does come, when the mouth opens and closes around something edible, when the long interval of waiting resolves into the brief event of feeding, the eel's body responds. The stomach expands. The elastic walls accommodate whatever has been taken in. And then the eel settles back into its drift, carrying the weight of the meal inside it, digesting slowly in the cold, processing the calories at the pace that the deep sea demands. There is no hurry in any of this. The meal will take time to yield what the eel needs from it. The eel has time. That is, perhaps, the thing most worth sitting with. Not the strangeness of the shape, not the improbability of the glowing tail, not the engineering of the expandable jaw, but the time. The gulper eel lives inside a kind of time that is very different from the time most animals experience. Long stretches of near stillness. A world that changes slowly, if it changes at all. Darkness that is not interrupted by day. Cold that does not warm with the season. The eel drifts through all of it without rushing toward anything, without retreating from anything, simply present in the vast and patient dark, waiting for the water to deliver what it occasionally delivers. There is something almost restful in that, when you hold it long enough. A life stripped of urgency, a life that asks only to remain and to be ready, and to take the chance when the chance arrives. The water is very still at that depth. The eel drifts within it, trailing its long tail, its mouth at rest, its body holding its position in the column with the minimum of effort required. Somewhere above, the surface is doing whatever the surface does, moving with weather and tide and the passage of light. Down here, none of that arrives. There is only the slow, dark, quiet world, and the eel moving through it in its patient way, carrying its small light behind it, waiting without impatience for whatever comes next. Most of that time is quiet, but in the deep sea, even quiet can include a message. The gulper eel carries a light it did not choose to carry. The small organ at the tip of its tail, that faint pinkish red glow described in an earlier part of this journey, does not turn off. It pulses or it holds steady, depending on what the animal is doing and what researchers have been lucky enough to observe in the brief windows that deep-sea footage allows. It is always there. And in a place where almost nothing produces light at all, something that is always there becomes, by definition, significant. What that significance means in practice is a question science has not fully answered. That is not a failure of science. It is simply an honest accounting of how difficult it is to watch an animal that lives 1,000 meters below the surface, in water that costs enormous resources to reach, in darkness that swallows everything a camera cannot illuminate. What researchers have is glimpses. What they have built from those glimpses is careful inference. And careful inference, followed patiently, has a way of arriving at something that feels true, even when certainty is still a long way off. So this is a section about what might be. about what the light may do and why those possibilities are worth sitting with, even without a final answer. One of the most discussed possibilities is that the glowing tail functions as a lure. The idea is straightforward. In the deep sea, where light is almost entirely absent, any point of brightness becomes a curiosity. Small animals, crustaceans, fish, invertebrates, that have spent their lives in near total darkness may be drawn toward light the way insects move toward a lamp on a warm night. Not because light means safety, not because they understand what it is, but because light in a lightless world is unusual, and unusual things have a way of attracting attention. If small animals move toward the glow at the tip of the gulper eel's tail, and if the gulper eel holds its long body in a certain orientation, perhaps curled slightly, the tail elevated, the enormous mouth hanging open and still at the other end, then the light becomes something more than decoration. It becomes the first part of a sequence. Curiosity brings the prey close. Proximity does the rest. The mouth, which needs almost no effort to open and almost no warning to deploy, simply receives what the light has gathered. This is speculation, but it is the kind of speculation that makes sense of what is already known about the animal's anatomy. A body that conserves energy, a mouth that opens wide and closes around whatever enters it, a tail long enough to keep the lure at a useful distance from the rest of the body. Each of these features, understood separately, is already remarkable. Understood together, as parts of a possible system, they become something that feels almost designed. Which is, of course, not the right word, but the feeling that design produces is exactly what evolution sometimes achieves through long, patient selection. There is a parallel worth noting. The anglerfish, which lives in similar depths and faces similar scarcities, uses a bioluminescent lure that grows directly from its forehead. A filament tipped with glowing bacteria, dangled in front of the mouth like a fishing line in front of a hook. The strategy is well documented and clearly effective. The gulper eel's arrangement is different in almost every detail. The light is at the far end of the body rather than the front. The mechanism is not a dangling filament, but a fixed organ. The animal's shape is entirely unlike the anglerfish's compact form. But the underlying logic, if the lure hypothesis is correct, is similar. Light draws, darkness delivers. What makes the gulper eel's version stranger, and in some ways more interesting, is the distance involved. The tail is long. The light at its tip is far from the mouth. Whatever the light attracts must travel the length of that body before it reaches the part of the animal that can do anything with it. This seems inefficient until you consider that the eel may not be hunting in the way a surface predator hunts, with direct pursuit and close coordination between sense and strike. The eel may be setting a condition, creating a situation in which something worth eating becomes likely to arrive at a useful location. Not a chase, a patient geometry. That patience is worth returning to because it shapes everything about how this animal seems to move through its world. The deep sea does not reward urgency. There is not enough food, not enough oxygen in the muscles, not enough energy available from the cold and sparse water for an animal to sustain repeated bursts of speed and effort. What the deep sea rewards is stillness that is also readiness, calm that is also alert. The gulper eel, with its weak musculature and its enormous passive mouth, seems built for exactly this, an animal that has made patience into a form of precision. The glowing tail fits that pattern, a lure does not require the animal to move toward its prey. It requires the animal to wait in the right way, in the right position, for long enough that something comes close on its own. The energy cost of holding a light is low. The energy cost of swimming in pursuit is high. In a world where energy is the limiting resource, a lure is almost logical. It is hunting by subtraction, removing the most expensive part of the process and replacing it with something that simply glows. But attraction may not be the only thing the light does. There is another possibility, quieter and harder to test, that researchers have considered. The light may function as a signal between gulper eels themselves. This requires some care to think through. The gulper eel is not a social animal in any way that resembles the sociality of, say, a dolphin or a reef fish. It does not travel in groups. It does not appear to coordinate feeding or share information about food sources. The deep sea, with its distances and its darkness, tends to work against that kind of connection. But solitary animals still have reasons to communicate. Reproduction requires finding another individual of the same species. Territory, if the concept applies at all in the open water column, might be established or acknowledged through signals. Even a brief exchange of information, "I am here, I am this kind," has value in a world where encounters are rare and mistaken identity could be costly. A bioluminescent signal visible from some distance in black water could, in principle, serve that function. The color of the gulper eel's glow, that reddish pink, unusual for the deep sea where blue-green tends to dominate, might function as a marker of species identity. Not a complex message, just a point of light with a particular quality that another gulper eel, and perhaps only a gulper eel, would recognize as meaningful. A presence, announced without sound, without movement, from across the dark. This, too, is inference rather than confirmed observation. The honest answer to the question of what the light means is that researchers are still working toward it. What has been observed is the light itself, its color, its location, its behavior under different conditions. What has been built from that observation is a set of reasonable hypotheses. The lure, the signal, the possibility that it serves more than one function at once, the way many features of deep-sea animals seem to carry multiple uses within a single structure. That multiplicity is something worth pausing on. The gulper eel's mouth is not only for eating, it also functions as a kind of net, a passive receiver, a structure that works differently depending on what the animal is doing. The body is not only for locomotion, it is also for storage, for expansion, for becoming temporarily larger than itself. The tail is not only for swimming, it may also be for signaling, for attracting, for doing the slow, quiet work of drawing the world toward the animal rather than driving the animal toward the world. This is how evolution tends to work in environments of scarcity. Features do not get to be single purpose. Everything that costs energy to maintain must earn its place through more than one kind of usefulness. The gulper eel, shaped over millions of years by a world that offers almost nothing, has arrived at a body where almost nothing is wasted and almost nothing does only one thing. The light pulses on in the dark. Whatever it is doing, attracting, signaling both at once, or something researchers have not yet named, it continues. The eel drifts. The water is cold and still and vast. The light is small against all of that, but it is consistent. It does not flicker out when the animal is tired. does not brighten when something approaches. It holds, steady and faint, at the far end of a long and patient body. There is something almost meditative about that image, not because it is dramatic, it is the opposite of dramatic, but because it is an animal that has found a way to participate in the world around it without straining toward it. The light goes out into the dark, and the dark receives it, and whatever happens next happens slowly, at the pace of deep water, at the pace of a world that has never been in any particular hurry. Most of what the gulper eel does is invisible to us. Most of what it signals, if it signals at all, is in a language we do not yet fully read. What we have is the outline, a shape in black water, a faint glow at one end, a vast opening at the other, and between them, a long and quiet body that has been making sense of this world for far longer than we have been trying to understand it. That is enough to rest with. The eel does not require our understanding to continue its work. It drifts on in the dark, carrying its small light, patient in a way that requires no effort, because patience at that depth is simply what living looks like. And whatever the light may say, it finally serves the oldest purpose in the ocean, helping life continue from one sparse meal to the next. That is the rhythm the gulper eel lives inside, not the rhythm of tides or seasons, or the daily cycling of light and dark that organizes so much life above it. The rhythm down here is longer and less predictable. It is the rhythm of scarcity itself, the long wait, the sudden chance, and then the long wait again. Most animals we are familiar with eat regularly. They graze, forage, hunt, and find food across the hours of a day. The body expects this. It is built around this expectation. But the gulper eel lives in a world where that expectation would be a form of suffering, because the deep ocean cannot meet it. Food does not arrive on a schedule. It drifts down from above, unpredictably, in quantities that vary enormously from one place to the next, and 1 week to the next. What the eel has evolved over a very long time is not a strategy for finding food reliably. It is a strategy for surviving the gaps between finding it at all. That distinction matters more than it might first seem. It shapes everything: the body, the behavior, the metabolism, the way energy is stored and spent. The gulper eel is not simply an animal that eats rarely. It is an animal that has been redesigned at almost every level around the fact of rarity. The metabolism at the center of this life runs slow, deliberately, functionally slow. A warm-blooded animal in the same situation would burn through its reserves within days. The gulper eel does not have that problem, because it does not generate its own body heat, and because its internal processes run at a pace calibrated to the cold, quiet world around it. Chemical reactions happen more slowly in cold water. The body's demands are lower. Each unit of stored energy lasts longer. In a world where the next meal might be days away or longer, this is not a limitation. It is the whole point. That is why cold is not merely a condition the eel endures. Cold is part of what makes its life possible. The chill of the deep sea is woven into its biology the way warmth is woven into ours. Remove the cold and the metabolic math stops working. The eel belongs to its temperature the way a key belongs to a particular lock. What this means in practice is that a single meal, one small fish, one cluster of crustaceans, one drifting mass of soft-bodied prey, can carry the eel forward for a substantial stretch of time. The body does not rush through what it has been given. It works carefully, extracting what it can, storing what it cannot immediately use, and drawing on those stores in the quietest possible way across the hours and days that follow. The meal becomes a kind of slow gift, given all at once and received gradually. Digestion in the deep sea is its own quiet process. The prey enters the vast pouch of the jaw and stomach, and the body begins its careful work. Because the eel's musculature is reduced, the long, slender body not built for powerful, sustained movement, the energy cost of simply existing is low. This matters enormously. An animal that burns little just by being alive can afford to take its time. It does not need to rush back into hunting mode. It can drift, still and patient, while the meal is processed, while the nutrients are absorbed, while the body replenishes whatever it's spent in the effort of catching something at all. There is something almost meditative about this, considered from a distance. The eel does not experience urgency the way a surface predator does. It does not pace. It does not scan horizons anxiously for the next target. It drifts in the dark and lets the body do its slow, thorough work, and the dark asks nothing more of it than that. But the life is not without risk. Every feeding event carries its own kind of danger, and the danger is not always obvious. The gulper eel's mouth and stomach can expand to accommodate prey of surprising size. This has been established, the remarkable elasticity of the body, the way the jaws hinge open to take what the deep sea rarely offers. What this means, though, is that the eel occasionally takes on more than it can easily manage. A prey item that is too large, too vigorous, or too difficult to process can create problems that outlast the catch itself. A meal that fights back on the way down. A stomach stretched past its most comfortable limits. The body working to break down something it has not quite encountered before. These are not catastrophic risks, most of the time, but they are real, and they are the other edge of the strategy. The same anatomy that allows the eel to take enormous advantage of rare abundance is the anatomy that occasionally overreaches. The jaw that opens wide enough to swallow something half the eel's own length is a jaw that sometimes says yes, when something more cautious might say no. What makes this worth considering is what it reveals about the nature of opportunism in extreme environments. The deep sea does not offer the luxury of being selective, not reliably. An animal that waits for the perfect meal will wait a long time. An animal that takes what comes, even when what comes is difficult, will have better odds across the long stretch of its life. The eel's boldness, if that word applies to something so slow and dark and patient, is not recklessness. It is the accumulated logic of a lineage that survived by saying yes more often than no. There is also the question of what happens between meals, during the long drifts when nothing edible comes close enough to matter. The body manages. It draws on stored lipids, on whatever energy was set aside during the last successful feeding. The process is quiet and invisible. Nothing dramatic announces that the eel is running on reserves. It simply continues. It drifts in the same patient way, the long tail trailing behind it, the faint light pulsing at the end of it, the enormous jaw held loosely in the dark water. Days may pass this way. Some research on deep-sea fish suggests that certain species can go weeks without feeding and remain functional, their slow metabolisms stretching stored energy across timescales that seem almost implausible by the standards of surface life. Whether the gulper eel reaches those extremes is not fully known. the deep sea keeps its records poorly from a human perspective. But the body's architecture strongly suggests this kind of endurance is built in, not exceptional. And there is something quietly remarkable about that endurance. Not the dramatic endurance of an animal running or swimming or fighting for survival, but the endurance of simply persisting, of continuing to function, to drift, to wait, to sense the water around it for the faint signals that might mean food is near. All of this sustained across long stretches of nothing. Endurance here is not effort. It is the opposite of effort. It is the art of spending as little as possible for as long as necessary until something changes. When something does change, when a small fish drifts too close, or a crustacean descends from above, or something edible enters the radius of whatever the eel can sense, the response is not explosive. It does not need to be. The eel has been built for a version of hunting that resembles less a chase and more an encounter. The jaws open. The water rushes in. What was outside is now inside. The whole event, from the animal's perspective, may be over before anything like alarm has registered in the prey. This is the other side of patience. All that drifting, all that stillness, all that slow metabolic quiet. It is not just survival. It is preparation. The body has been conserving itself for exactly this moment, when the moment finally arrives. The energy not spent on swimming, not spent on maintaining warmth, not spent on anything unnecessary. It is there, available, when the jaws need to move. The economy of the eel's life makes its rare moments of action possible. After feeding, the body shifts. The stomach is full, or fuller than it was. The processing begins. The eel settles into an even quieter mode, if such a thing is possible. The long body drifts more slowly still. The tail light continues its faint pulse. The deep water holds everything at the same cold, dark temperature it has always maintained, indifferent to whether the animal inside it has just eaten or has not eaten in days. This indifference is not cruelty. It is simply the nature of the place. The deep sea does not modulate itself around the needs of the animals inside it. It is vast and cold and dark and largely empty, and the animals that live there have each found their own way to make that vastness workable. The Gulper Eel's way is this: to need very little, to want very little, to take what comes with a mouth built for taking, and to carry whatever it gains for as long as the body can carry it. A meal, in this context, is more than nutrition. It is time. It is days of continued existence, of drifting and sensing and waiting for the next chance. Each successful feeding extends the eel's horizon a little further. It buys more dark water, more slow drifting, more patient hours in the deep. The meal does not just sustain the body. It sustains the possibility of the next meal and the one after that, across a life measured not in full days of grazing, but in the longer intervals between things worth opening a mouth for. There is a particular kind of sufficiency in that life, considered quietly and without judgment. The eel does not need more than it needs. It does not store beyond its capacity or pursue beyond its range. It lives inside the available, and the available in the deep sea is just enough. Just enough has kept this lineage alive for a very long time. Just enough is, in its own way, more than sufficient. The deep water continues to hold it. The tail drifts behind. The light pulses once and again, slow and faint and steady in the dark. And the eel goes on, measuring its life in rare meals and long drifts between them, as it always has, as it will for as long as the deep sea remains the deep sea. After a while, the gulper eel stops seeming odd in any simple sense. It begins to feel like a question asked by evolution and answered very slowly. And the answer is not a compromise. It is not a half measure. It is a body so thoroughly committed to one solution, so fully organized around the problem of finding food in a place where food is rare, that every ordinary expectation about what a fish should look like simply falls away. What remains is something that works, something that has worked in the cold and dark for longer than we can easily picture. That is worth sitting with for a moment. Natural selection does not design. That is important to remember. There is no mind behind the process, no intention, no goal. Variation appears, and some variations survive better than others, and over generations the survivors accumulate. The result can look, from the outside, as if something planned it, but nothing did. The gulper eel's enormous mouth was not chosen. It was kept. Again and again, across countless generations, the individuals with slightly more jaw, slightly more flexibility, slightly more capacity to take in what little came by. Those individuals fed and lived and passed their shapes forward. The ones who could not take the chance when it appeared did not pass anything forward at all. This is how a mouth becomes larger than a body, not through invention, through subtraction and time. What makes this strange from where we stand is that we tend to think of bodies as balanced things, proportional. We picture a fish and we picture something streamlined, symmetrical, built in obvious relation to itself. The head suggests the body suggests the tail. Everything implies everything else in roughly equal measure. The gulper eel violates this intuition completely. The jaw does not suggest the body. The tail does not balance the jaw. The whole animal seems assembled from parts that belong to different scales, different logics, different creatures. Yet this is not failure. It is not a mistake that evolution is in the process of correcting. It is a working answer to a working problem. The disproportion is the solution. That is the pivot point. That is where the gulper eel stops being a curiosity and becomes a kind of teacher. Not a teacher with a lesson to deliver, but one whose existence forces a question. What else have we been assuming? We assume proportion. We assume symmetry. We assume that a body's parts should look as though they belong together in some obvious, visually legible way. These assumptions come from the world we know, a world of sunlight and open space, of animals that chase and are chased, of bodies that must do many things at once. In that world, balance makes sense. Versatility makes sense. A body that can sprint and turn and hide and display, that body tends toward a certain kind of wholeness. But the deep sea is not that world. In the deep sea, the only thing that matters for a creature like the gulper eel is what happens in the rare moment when something edible drifts close. Everything else, locomotion, display, speed, turning, is secondary, almost irrelevant. And so, the body reorganized itself over enormous spans of time around that one moment. The jaw grew, the stomach softened into elastic, the muscles reduced, the tail grew long and thin. The whole organism became, in effect, a waiting structure, a patient architecture for a single event. Elegance, in this context, does not look the way we expect elegance to look. We often use the word elegant to describe things that seem efficient and pleasing in equal measure. Things that feel right when we look at them, that satisfy some quiet sense of proportion. A swift swing, a dolphin's arc through water, a coral polyp's symmetrical radiance. These feel elegant because they match our intuitions about how form and function should relate to one another. The Gulper eel does not look elegant in that way. It looks improbable. It looks like something assembled in the dark by a process that had no interest in appearances. And that is exactly what it is. Yet it is elegant in a deeper sense. The sense that it is precisely fitted to its world. Not fitted to our idea of what a world should require. Fitted to the actual world it inhabits. Cold, pressurized, lightless, vast, and very nearly empty. Measured against those conditions, every proportion makes sense. Every departure from the familiar is a solution. That is a different kind of elegance. Quieter, less immediately visible, but perhaps more honest about what elegance actually means. There is something in this that invites a certain humility. We are animals of the surface. Our sense of what is possible, what is normal, what looks right. All of it was shaped in light, in air, at pressures our bodies can tolerate without effort. We evolved in a very small slice of the planet's conditions, and so our intuitions about form and function are calibrated to that slice. When we encounter something from outside it, something from a world of crushing pressure and near total darkness, our first instinct is often to call it strange, extreme, bizarre. But the Gulper eel is not strange to the deep sea. It is native there. It belongs there in the deepest sense of the word. It is we who are the visitors. We who are the exception, the narrow band of life that happened to develop in conditions mild enough to produce the kinds of intuitions we carry. The strangeness, in other words, is partly ours. This is not a troubling thought. It is a settling one. It suggests that the world is larger than our category systems, that life has found more answers than we have names for. That evolution, working without intention across vast stretches of time, has produced solutions that no mind could have anticipated, because no mind was involved. Only pressure, only variation, only the quiet arithmetic of what survives. The Gulper eel is one answer, one particular response to one particular set of conditions. And it is not the only answer the deep sea has produced. There are others down there, bodies built around other scarcities, other rare opportunities, other problems that the surface world does not pose. Each of them is, in its own way, equally improbable, equally fitted, equally real. There is something restful in this, if you let it be. The world is not organized around what we find plausible. It is organized around what works. And what works, it turns out, is far stranger and far wider and far more various than any single mind could hold. The Gulper eel is part of that width. So is every creature in the deep, every organism in the shallow reef, every cell in every body that has ever found a way to persist. All of it is the same process, working in different conditions, producing different shapes, all of them sufficient. Sufficient, that is the word. Not perfect in any absolute sense, not built towards some ideal, but sufficient, well enough fitted to survive and reproduce and persist across the kind of time that turns mountains into sediment. That is all evolution asks. That is all it selects for. And the Gulper eel, in its dark and quiet world, has been sufficient for a very long time. The body drifts. The jaw hangs loose. The long tail trails behind, its faint light pulsing. Nothing about it matches what we expect a successful animal to look like. And yet, here it is, in the dark, doing exactly what it needs to do. That is what the Gulper Eel reveals, if you sit with it long enough. Not that nature is strange, not that the deep sea is beyond understanding, but that life is more patient and more various and more committed to simply continuing than our imaginations tend to allow for. It found a way. It always finds a way. The way is almost never the one we would have predicted, and that is enough. Perhaps that is why encounters with this animal feel so dreamlike. It does not merely live far away. It lives beyond some of our oldest assumptions. We have spent a long time now in the company of the Gulper Eel. We have traced the shape of it, the mechanics of it, the long patience of its days. And somewhere in all of that, something quieter has been accumulating. A feeling that is harder to name than any fact. The feeling that this animal should not quite exist, that it arrives at the edge of what the mind is prepared to picture. That feeling is worth sitting with for a moment. It is not really about the eel. Human beings grew up at the surface, not just in an evolutionary sense, though that is true. We grew up at the surface in the sense that every creature we have ever known well, every animal we have loved or feared or named or drawn on cave walls, lived in a world with light in it. The animals of our imagination, the ones that became our myths, our warnings, our companions, were animals that breathed visible air and moved through visible space. They had eyes that caught sunlight. They had colors that meant something in the light. They made sense to us because they were shaped by the same conditions that shaped us. The deep sea was not part of that education. It could not be. For most of human history, the deep ocean was not merely unknown. It was unknowable. There was no technology for reaching it, no language yet for what might live there, no framework for imagining animals that had never touched light at all. What lived below was simply elsewhere, a different category of place entirely, closer to imagination than to geography. And so our imaginations stayed shallow. When people first began to bring deep-sea animals to the surface, in nets, in dredges, through the slow accumulation of deep-sea trawling that began in the 19th century, the reactions were often not scientific. They were something closer to disbelief. The creatures that came up did not look like variations on familiar themes. They looked like they had been assembled by a different logic entirely. Too many teeth, too much mouth, lights in unexpected places, bodies that had shed what seemed necessary and kept what seemed impossible. The Gulper Eel fits that description almost perfectly. It is, in the formal sense, a fish. It has a spine, it has fins, it has a jaw. But the jaw is so large it seems to belong to a different animal. The fins are so reduced they barely suggest fins at all. The tail is so long and so thin it trails behind like a thought that has not quite finished. When you picture a fish, any fish, you picture something with a certain proportion, a certain completeness of form. The Gulper Eel declines that proportion entirely. That is why it feels unreal. What makes this worth thinking about is not the eel's strangeness exactly. It is the source of the strangeness. The Gulper Eel does not look like a fish from a nightmare. It looks like a fish that evolved in a place where our inherited ideas about fish simply did not apply. The rules we carry, the proportions, the shapes, the intuitions about what a body should look like, were built by a lifetime of encountering surface animals. They are accurate for surface animals. They are useless here. The deep sea does not know what we expect. It never has. And so every time we pull something from that darkness and find it confusing, the confusion is not a quality of the animal. It is a quality of our preparation. We are surprised because our imagination was trained on a different curriculum. The eel has simply been going about its business in a world that shaped it by different rules. That is a quiet and important thing to understand. There is something almost humbling about it. We tend to think of imagination as expansive. We tell ourselves that the mind can picture anything, that creativity has no ceiling, that wonder has no limit. And in some directions, that is true. But the deep sea suggests a different possibility, that imagination is also ecological, that it grows in the conditions it was raised in, that it knows most fluently what it has already encountered. We are very good at imagining animals that live in light. We are very good at imagining scale, things larger or smaller than what we know. We are even reasonably good at imagining speed, color, danger. But darkness, real darkness, permanent and total darkness, is harder. A world without pressure, differences that a body can feel, without day and night, without the rhythm of seasons reaching down. That is a world the imagination approaches slowly, carefully, like unfamiliar ground. The Gulper Eel lives in that world, not as a visitor, not as something that ended up there by accident, as something that belongs there so completely that its body encodes the logic of that place in every proportion it has chosen. And yet, we found it. That is worth pausing over. Somewhere in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, human beings began to understand that the deep ocean was not empty. It was full of animals that had been living in the dark for longer than our species has existed, full of shapes that our categories had not accounted for. The discovery was not dramatic in the way that discoveries in stories are dramatic. It was slow. It came through nets and pressure gauges, and the careful work of scientists who spent careers studying things that most people would never see. But the shape of that discovery is still remarkable. We sent instruments into a world we could not enter, and what came back changed the edges of what we thought was possible. The Gulper Eel was part of that change. It still is. Even now, what we know about this animal comes mostly from specimens caught in nets, still lifeless, often damaged by the change in pressure. The living animal in its living context, moving through the water column in the dark, is something very few people have ever seen. The footage that exists is sparse. The observations are fragmentary. The eel remains, in a meaningful sense, something that science has touched at the edges but not held in full view. That is not a failure. It is a reflection of how genuinely remote that world is. There are animals on this planet that have lived for millions of years in places humans have never been and may never comfortably reach. They have been doing whatever they do, drifting, feeding, signaling, waiting, in complete indifference to whether we know about them. The Gulper Eel is one of those animals. Our awareness of it is recent, partial, and still growing. The eel's existence predates our curiosity by an enormous margin. There is something restful in that thought. The imagination, when it tries to follow the Gulper Eel down into the dark, eventually reaches a place where it must simply stop and accept the limits of what it can picture. The cold becomes too cold to feel clearly. The pressure becomes too complete to simulate in the body. The darkness becomes a darkness that has no analogy in any room, any night, any closed-eye experience that a surface animal can draw on. And then the eel is just there, in that place, being entirely itself. That is the image that stays. Not the strangeness of the form, not the improbable jaw or the glowing tail or the length of the body tapering into nothing. Just the fact of its presence, just the quiet persistence of an animal in a world that most of what we call imagination cannot fully enter. We can know about it. We can describe it. We can sit in the dark and think about it for a long time. But we cannot quite picture it from the inside. And maybe that is exactly the right place to stop. Not in frustration, not in defeat, but in the kind of stillness that comes when something is simply larger than what you brought to hold it. The eel is out there now, in water that has not seen light in longer than we can feel. And it is enough to know that, and let the knowing be enough, and rest. And in the end, what stays with us may be less the size of the mouth than the softness of that small light behind it. The gulper eel carries it everywhere, through water so cold it would stop a human heart in minutes, through pressure that would collapse anything not built over millions of years to accept it, through darkness so complete that light itself seems like a memory of somewhere else. And still, at the end of that long, improbable body, the small glow continues. It is not a large light. It is not even, by most accounts, a bright one. A faint pulse. A red or pinkish warmth at the tip of a tail that trails behind an animal that may never be seen by another member of its own kind for weeks or months at a time. And yet, it persists. The body produces it, maintains it, carries it forward through the black water as though the darkness itself is something to be answered quietly, without urgency, simply by continuing to glow. There is something in that image worth sitting with. We tend to think of light as something that belongs to the surface, to warmth and visibility, and the crowded, busy world where most life as we understand it unfolds. Light is where we live. Light is how we navigate, how we recognize each other, how we measure the passing of time. The absence of it, for most creatures shaped by surface life, is temporary. A night that ends, a cave that opens, a cloud that moves. The gulper eel has never known that kind of light, not once in its life. The world it inhabits is lit only by the things that live in it. Small, cold fires carried by creatures that have learned, across enormous spans of time, to make their own illumination because no other kind is available. The gulper eel is one of those creatures. Its light is not borrowed. It is not reflected. It is generated from within, sustained by the body's own chemistry, offered up into water that swallows it within a few meters in every direction. That is a very old solution to a very old problem. Bioluminescence in the deep ocean is not rare. It appears in forms almost too varied to catalogue. In bacteria, in jellyfish, in fish, in squid, in worms that drift through the midwater like slow sparks. Life at depth has returned to this answer so many times, in so many lineages, that it begins to feel less like an invention and more like something the darkness itself invites. A question the ocean keeps asking and that life keeps answering independently, again and again. The gulper eel's answer is its own. The placement of the light at the tail's end, rather than in the face or the body's center, makes it strange even among bioluminescent things. It trails the animal like something left behind, like a thought that persists after the thinker has moved on. We have considered what it might do, the ways it might attract, confuse, or orient other animals. And we have held those ideas gently because certainty is hard to come by in a world so difficult to observe. But the light itself is not in question. It exists. The eel makes it. The eel carries it. That much is simply true. And what is true sometimes is enough to think about for a long time. The Gulper eel has been on this planet in some form for a very long time. The lineage that produced it has persisted through changes that erased enormous numbers of other species. The deep ocean where it lives is in some ways the most stable environment on Earth, cold and dark and pressurized in ways that have not shifted as dramatically as the surface world across geological time. And yet, stability is not the same as ease. The deep sea is not gentle. It is simply consistent in its difficulty. And the animals that live there are not surviving in spite of their world. They are expressions of it, shaped by it, made from it in a very real sense, one generation at a time. The Gulper eel is what happens when a lineage spends an unimaginable span of time answering the same set of questions. How do you eat when food is rare? How do you move when moving costs more than you can afford to spend? How do you find anything, prey, or perhaps a mate, when the world offers no landmarks, no light, no reference points at all? The answers are written in the body, the enormous mouth, the elastic form, the reduced muscle, the trailing tail with its quiet fire at the end. Every feature is an answer. Every answer took longer than human history to arrive at. There is a kind of persistence in the natural world that is not heroic in the way we usually mean that word. It is not dramatic. It does not involve overcoming. It is simply continuation. The slow, patient fact of a lineage that kept finding a way, that kept producing bodies suited to their world, that kept going through extinctions and changes and the long grinding passage of deep time. The Gulper eel is an instance of that persistence. One more generation in a line that stretches back far enough that the numbers become difficult to hold in the mind. It does not know this about itself. It carries no awareness of its own lineage, no sense of the depth of time it represents. It drifts through cold water, opening when it should open, waiting when it should wait, carrying its small light behind it without any knowledge that the light is remarkable. Without any knowledge that anything about it is remarkable. That is perhaps the most quietly astonishing thing. We arrived at this animal through curiosity, through nets hauled up from the deep, through cameras lowered into places we cannot go ourselves, through the slow, patient work of people who wanted to understand what lives in the parts of this planet we can barely reach. And what we found, when we looked, was something that did not fit the shapes we expected. A mouth too large, a body too thin, a tail too long. A light in the wrong place, glowing the wrong color, doing something we still cannot fully explain. It asked us to revise. Not once, but repeatedly. Every feature required a new way of thinking about what a body could be, what a life could look like, what the word fish could possibly mean when stretched to include something like this. And that revision is still happening. The deep ocean is still mostly unknown. The Gulper eel is understood only in fragments, caught rarely, observed briefly, alive in its own world in ways we can infer but not truly follow. It continues to exist in water we cannot easily enter, living its long, patient life in the cold and the dark, carrying its light through a world that has no use for the categories we brought to it. What remains, when the facts have settled and the questions have been allowed to drift without needing answers, is something simpler than any of it. A fragile body, an enormous mouth, a tail that trails into the dark behind it like a sentence that hasn't finished yet, and at the very end of that tail, a light, small, faint, persistent, glowing in water that has been cold and dark since before the first human thought was ever had. Glowing because the body makes it. Glowing because this is simply what this animal does in the world it was made for, in the only way it knows. There is no drama in it. There is no triumph. The eel does not glow because it has overcome anything. It glows because it is alive, and being alive in the deep sea in the dark sometimes means carrying your own small warmth with you into the vast and patient nothing. That image does not resolve into a lesson. It does not need to. It simply stays, quiet and true and strange and very, very old. A lantern in the oldest night, drifting through water that has held it, and its kind, and the long, improbable story of its existence, without judgment, without end. The dark receives it. The dark continues. And somewhere far below the surface of the world, the light still glows. You are still. Not in the way that stillness is a choice, in the way that stillness is the only reasonable response to a world this large, this dark, this patient. The water is cold here, not uncomfortably so. The cold is simply what the water is, the same way the dark is simply what this place is. You have never known anything else. The cold holds you evenly from every direction, pressing gently against every surface of you. And you drift. Your body trails behind you like a thought that has not quite finished forming. The tail moves last. It always moves last. There is a long delay between the small adjustments of your forward body and the moment the tail responds. A slow wave traveling the full length of you before it reaches that faint living point of light at the very end. You do not think about this. You are this. The delay is not a problem. It is simply the shape of moving at your scale, in your world, at the pace this world requires. You are not going anywhere in particular. That is not the right way to understand it. You are present in the dark, in the cold, in the vast and pressurized quiet of water that has not seen light in a very long time. Being present here is enough. It is the whole work. Your jaws hang loose, not slack in the way that suggests weakness or sleep. Loose in the way that a thing hangs when it is ready, when it does not need to hold itself in any particular shape, because any shape will do. The jaw is a hinge, and the hinge is resting. There is an openness to you that is structural, that goes all the way down to the bones, or the loose approximations of bones that frame your enormous mouth. You carry that openness the way some animals carry armor. It is your version of being prepared. The dark ahead of you is the same as the dark behind you. You know this without looking. Looking is not quite the right word for what you do here. There is some sense of light somewhere, some faint registration of bioluminescent flickers at the edge of what you can perceive. But this is not a world understood through vision. The world arrives differently here, through pressure, through minute disturbances in the water, through the lateral line that runs the length of your body like a long, quiet ear, reading the column of water for anything that moves, anything that displaces, anything that is not simply more of the same cold and dark and stillness. Nothing moves. You drift. Time passes in the way that time passes in places without rhythm, without tide, without the pressure of light cycling overhead. There is no before and after in the same way. There is only the drift, and whatever the drift brings. Something shifts, not a sound, not quite. A change in the water ahead of you, a displacement. Something that is not the same as the nothing that surrounded it. Your body registers this before you have done anything in response. The lateral line carries the information the full length of you. Tail last, that small point of light drifting along behind everything else. And you adjust. Not quickly. Quickly is not the right tool here. You angle toward the disturbance. The motion is minimal. A change in orientation more than a surge of speed. You are not a fast animal. You are not built for speed. You are built for this. For the long patience, for the quiet adjustment, for the ability to be in the right position when something comes within reach. The deep sea does not reward pursuit. It rewards presence. The disturbance moves. You track it without urgency. Your tail drifts along behind you, that faint reddish glow trailing through the black water like the last ember of something that burned a very long time ago. You do not see it. It is behind you, always behind you, doing its work in the dark without your attention. Perhaps it is part of why the disturbance came toward you rather than away. Perhaps what is ahead of you has been drawn slowly by the patient pulse of light at the end of your long tail. You will never know. It does not matter. What matters is that something is here. Close. The jaws open, not with effort, with release. The hinge that was resting simply stops holding, and the mouth becomes something vast and dark and open in the darkness. A space within a space. A hollow inside the hollow, water rushing in as the jaw drops and spreads, and the whole front of you becomes an opening that is larger than most of the rest of you. The body follows. The elastic walls of your throat and stomach accommodate what is coming, stretching outward from that collapsed, slender resting shape into something swollen and full. Then it is done. The closing happens the way the opening did. Not with drama, not with force. The jaw settles back, the hinge rests again. And now there is weight in you that was not there before. A fullness that presses gently against the inside of what you are. The body has expanded to hold what you took, and you carry it now, drifting forward through the same dark and cold, but changed. Something has shifted in the long arithmetic of your existence. The meal has arrived. The long interval between this and the last time has ended. There will be another long interval now, and you will drift through it, and the body will process what it holds, slowly, in the cold and the dark, without wasting a single thing. You drift. The tail pulses its faint light behind you. There is no restlessness in you, no searching quality to the movement. You are not looking for the next thing. You are simply present in the aftermath of something that was enough, in a body that has done what it was built to do, in a world that is cold and dark and vast and entirely your own. The water holds you. The pressure is even on every side, not crushing. Simply present, the way the cold is simply present, the way the dark is simply present. You have never known a world without pressure, and so pressure is not something you feel as pressure. It is just the quality of being here, of being this in this place. Your body is long and trailing and still. The tail comes last, always last, that slow wave of adjustment moving from your forward body down through the long taper of you, reaching the light at the very end in its own time. The light pulses, softly, steadily, a small, patient rhythm in the immense black water. You carry it without effort. It is simply part of you, the way the jaws are part of you, the way the elastic body is part of you. The light does not ask anything of you. It simply continues. You continue. The dark continues. Somewhere far above you, there is a surface. There is light up there, and warmth and movement, and the short, urgent rhythms of animals that live in a world of seasons and tides and the rising and falling of the sun. You have no knowledge of any of this. That world is as remote from you as the cold seabed is from the creatures of the surface. You exist in the middle distance of the ocean, not the very deepest dark, but deep enough that the light from above has never reached you. Deep enough that the water here has its own quality, its own weight, its own ancient patience. You belong to this, not in the way that belonging is chosen, in the way that belonging is simply true. You are made of this water, in the sense that every adaptation of your body is a conversation with this water, a response to what this water asks and offers and withholds. The loose jaw is an answer. The elastic body is an answer. The long trailing tail and its small red light are answers. You are a collection of answers to questions this world has been asking for a very long time. The drift slows, not because anything has changed, because the drift was always slow, and now it is slightly slower, and the body is settling into a kind of stillness that is different from the stillness of alert waiting. This is something quieter than that. The meal is held. The body is warm with the work of processing it. The lateral line reads the water and finds nothing that requires attention. You are still. The tail hangs behind you, barely moving. The light at its tip pulses once, then again slower, then once more in its own dim and patient rhythm, in the black water, in the cold, in the vast and ancient dark that has held things like you for longer than there are words for. You are here. You are still. The water holds you. Everything is quiet. Everything has always been quiet here. The dark is complete and even and soft in its completeness. Your body is long and loose and at rest. The jaws hang easy. The tail drifts, barely, in some current so gentle it is almost not a current at all. The light pulses once more, soft, slow, patient. And then the water is simply still, and you are simply in it. And the dark holds everything without effort, without condition, without asking anything at all. And at last, even that gentle drifting slows, until almost nothing remains but darkness, water, and rest. Somewhere far below the surface, in water that has not seen light in a very long time, the Gulper Eel continues. It does not know it has been watched tonight. It does not know that someone, somewhere far above the pressure and the cold, spent time thinking carefully about the shape of its jaws, the patience of its body, the small red pulse at the end of its long and improbable tail. It simply drifts. It simply is. That is what made it worth spending time with. Not the strangeness, though it is strange. Not the drama, because there is very little drama in the deep sea. What made it worth the time is the quiet truth underneath the anatomy. That life, given enough pressure and enough darkness and enough centuries, will find a way. It will find a way that looks nothing like what we expected. It will carry a lantern where no one can see the light. It will open a mouth larger than its own body and wait, patient as the water itself, for something to drift close enough. That kind of patience deserves to be rested in. Not studied anymore, just rested in. Let your jaw be soft now. Let the muscles of your face release one by one, the way pressure releases slowly from a body settling into deep water. Your hands are open. Your shoulders have found the surface beneath them, and they are not asking anything of you. The weight of your body is real and gentle and entirely supported. You have been in the deep tonight, not the frightening deep, the true deep, the quiet one, the one where an animal with a mouth like a cathedral and a body like a ribbon drifts through the dark carrying its own small light, expecting nothing, requiring nothing, simply continuing. There is something in that worth carrying into sleep. The Gulper Eel does not need the surface. It does not need warmth or brightness or the company of other species pressing close around it. It has made a life in the part of the world that most life never reaches, and it has made that life completely, without apology, without anything missing. It is enough. It has always been enough. Your eyes are heavy. That heaviness is not something to move against. The deep sea is still down there, in the dark, exactly as it was before you knew about it, and exactly as it will be long after tonight. The eel drifts through water that has not changed its nature in millions of years. The pressure holds everything in place. The cold keeps its slow and ancient time. And somewhere in all of that stillness, a faint red light pulses at the tip of a long tail, moving through black water, belonging entirely to the world it was made for. You are held too, quietly, without condition. The dark around you is your own, and it is safe, and it asks nothing of you now. There is no depth left to descend to. There is only this: the heaviness of a body that has finished its work for the day, the soft and familiar dark behind your eyes, and somewhere far below the reach of light, an ancient and patient creature continuing its slow drift through the deep. Let yourself be still. Sleep well, and good night.